Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
This morning, we begin a new book of the Torah. We begin the book of Devarim. And as Rabbi Ern and I spoke about in this week's Parsha podcast, the word Devarim can mean a number of different things. It can mean things. It can mean words, right? Ledaber means to speak. Devarim can be words. But also, when we're speaking in modern Hebrew, right, we have a list of Devarim to do. We have a list of things to do. It can really go either way. And we thought a little bit in our podcast, we reflected a little bit as Moshe was trying to re-articulate all of the highlights and, frankly, lowlights of the last 40 years in the desert. What are the things that are crucial? What are the things that are important? And Rabbi Aaron and I said, well, these are the things that we would share, right? Here are the 2 or 3 things in Judaism that we believe are critical, are the most important. And if you want to hear that, listen to our podcast. Today, I want to reflect on Devarim in a little bit of a different way. Because this Parsha, this Shabbat, always happens immediately before Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the saddest day of the year. It's when we recall the destruction of the first and second temple, and as well as a lot of other things throughout our history that have happened to us as a people. How do we bring these two ideas together? Because I think it's important not only to be reflective on the things and the words that we say that create us as a Jewish people, but we also have to be reflective of the words and the things that are said and that we do that bring our destruction, that bring challenge for us as a Jewish people. If we look at the Haftarah that is associated with today, that Rabbi Dalan is going to be reading for us, Haftarah Chazon, it is a vision, and they are words of warning. As we go through the book of Deuteronomy, as we go through the book of Devarim, we definitely have the fundamental ideas, but very often they're couched in words of warning. Even Shema Yisrael, we're going to be reading it next week, right? Hear, O Israel. It's not just the Lord our God, the Lord is one. But Moshe had the need to say, listen, you have to listen to this. This is important. This is important for us to be paying attention to, because if we don't, we're going to miss something fundamental. We also, at this time of year, have to be listening for those things that tear us apart, those things that are a threat to us. And both Rabbi Ern and I over the years have spoken about the need for us as a people to think about the words that we say, to think about the words that we choose, because often those words can be destructive. Those words can tear us apart. Those words can actually create barriers and boundaries between us as a people. We see that. We see that happening in the state of Israel right now. We see that happening throughout the world as people get more polarized, as people become more entrenched in their positions, and as, frankly, social media allows us to say things that we never would have dreamed of saying in front of somebody's face. Then there are moments, and thankfully they are few and far between, but there are moments when somebody actually does say something and does say something to our face or to a person's face where you really just have to take a step back and go, I can't believe that was just said. And we have to find a way to get over that shock, and we have to find a way to say, wait a second, these words are destructive words. These words mean something. And to me, as we think about Devarim, as we think about this parsha, that's what this parsha is trying to tell us. Words mean something. And the words we choose mean something. And so when this week in the San Diego Community, County Human Relations Commission, words that were unbelievable were said with no reaction by the commission itself, we need to take notice. What was said, I will actually read it for you in quotes. One of the commissioners, Commissioner Raufi, took the microphone and spoke and said, I opened the book of Jews again, and I read a few verses. I'm actually referring to the Jewish Deuteronomy that states, quote, go kill Palestinians, wipe them all out. So it's a teaching that they, on a daily basis, teach their followers in their synagogues. So how are we going to resolve this? There was actually an audience member who couldn't help herself and actually yelled out, quote, are you serious right now? And then he went on. Well, Deuteronomy 20:16, and I'm reading it for you right now, God's command that every living person in Canaan be put to death as the people conquered the land, no mercy for the women and children, no compassion on the ages. There is information out there that states in Deuteronomy, this is information that states in Deuteronomy. I'm not sure, I'm just reading this, so how are we going to resolve this? What was most troubling about this, not only did nobody from the commission speak up and say anything in response to this, the only thing that really was said a little bit later on was the audience member was chastised for being out of order and speaking out. I had a conversation with Sarah Brown, Dr. Sarah Brown, who is the head of the San Diego chapter of the AJC here. And she actually helped me put it into perspective a little bit. Because on the one hand, I was so incredulous that somebody would say this. And she reminded me that people have been saying this very thing for centuries, because this is nothing other than a modern blood libel. For those who are unfamiliar with that term, right, a blood libel is an accusation that was made, and it started in the 1300s, and it's been going all the way through, up even until in the modern days. The ADL has records of blood libels here in the United States in 1928. But a blood libel is an accusation that Jews are killing the non-Jewish population. Originally, it was for use of the blood, hence the term blood libel, either in rituals for matzahs. It was around Passover very often. But as history has gone through, the form, the context has changed, but the accusation is still there. That it is part of what we do to teach that we need to kill everyone else around us, the non-Jewish people. And my friends, blood libels have cost more Jewish lives throughout the centuries than any other anti-Semitic idea other than, obviously, the Holocaust. These are very dangerous words. And as we begin to hear them, as we hear them uttered and spoken, we can't let them pass. The AJC, the ADL, the Federation are working together with the San Diego County to address these issues. A hate crime report has been actually made, a hate speech report has been made there's a new California website where you can actually go and log and report hate crimes and hate speech, and that has been made. But this is something that I felt the need for us as a Jewish community to be aware of, and for us as the Jewish community to say, this can't stand. We need to be there to support our Jewish organizations that are out there on the front lines fighting against this. For those of us who have connections with people in the city and in the county, it's time to start writing and picking up the phone and saying, what's your response to this? How are you going to sit and be silent? Remember, and I've said this many times, our tradition says, Shtika kehoda adami. Silence is the same as agreement. So if people aren't speaking out against this, they're tacitly agreeing with this. And we as a community, both Beth Am and the Jewish community, need to respond. I encourage people, as we think about this Tisha B'Av, as we reflect on the destruction of the Jewish people, 4 days from now, and we're going to sit outside on the floor reading Lamentations, I have to believe that the Jewish people who lived at those times couldn't imagine that their destruction was around the corner. And our rabbis remind us that the destruction of those times came not only from action, whether it be idolatry and other sins that they attribute to the destruction of the first temple, or sinat chinam, baseless hatred among the Jewish people that they attribute for the destruction of the second temple. But the implication on both of those is the silence and acquiescence of everybody else. We shouldn't sit here and say, here we live in San Diego. We as Jews can walk freely, we can pray freely, that is true. But there are people who are looking towards our destruction and are still working towards that. And we need to be vigilant, and we need to be able to respond in kind and appropriately when we hear things like that. For those of you who want to know more about the things that you can do, it's Shabbat now, I can't give you things, but please reach out to me and I will be able to connect you with the people that are on the front line of this fight, whether it be the AJC, whether it be ADL, whether it be Federation, so that we can respond appropriately to these incredible statements. Unfortunately, I hear the shock in the audience member's words when she said, "Are you serious right now?" The answer is yes. He is, and he was, and we need to be.